Hey guys! So this is a response to the one janitor's video, Why I Am Not a Vegan. Several of you asked for it, and this gives me a chance to, I guess, clarify some things regarding veganism, or at least why I am a vegan. So in his video, he lays out 7 arguments, I guess, that he's heard from vegans in support of veganism, and then responds to them. So that's what I'm going to do. I will state the argument for veganism, and then his response, and then my response to his response. Okay, so the first argument is veganism is healthier.
There's nothing inherent to eating meat that makes people less healthy.
Processed meat and red meat and colon cancer? Okay, so obviously not all meat is of the processed or red variety, but all meat does contain factors or lack of factors that make it the worst option when compared to plant foods, namely saturated fat and cholesterol content, and lack of fiber and antioxidants.
This claim is often made by comparing the vegan diet to the average diet, but if the average diet is terrible, then any diet looks good by comparison.
True. Even paleo looks decent when compared to the standard American diet.
Also, a lot of the common wisdom about what results in a good diet is based on false information. For example, we're learning today that foods with cholesterol and saturated fat are not nearly as bad as we once thought they were.
Not quite. It is true that genetics play a larger role in determining blood cholesterol levels than previously thought, but dietary cholesterol, the cholesterol that we eat, is still a risk factor for cardiovascular disease, and saturated fat is an even bigger risk factor. This is scientific consensus, and anyone stating otherwise, citing the supposedly credible meta-analyses that supposedly counter the strong connection between saturated fat and cardiovascular disease, they are promoting pseudoscience. And I have included a few links in the description that go into much more detail on this topic. So I essentially agree that the health argument for veganism is not that compelling compared to just, eating less animal products. It's pretty weak, and it's why I very rarely talk about it on this channel, except to, debunk stupid health claims made by vegans regarding veganism, and also to help show vegans how to eat a vegan diet successfully. The only thing I care about as someone who is vegan as a means for reducing suffering is whether or not a vegan diet can be done healthfully, and the answer is yes. Government and non-governmental groups support this conclusion, including the USDA, the American Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, and the American Academy of Pediatrics. Eating meat is unnecessary.
Doing a cartwheel in my living room is unnecessary. Whether or not something is necessary, as vague a term as that is irrelevant to whether or not it's okay to do it.
Doing a cartwheel in your living room harms no one, so in this case, the necessity of it is irrelevant. But obviously the same cannot be said for eating meat. In the case of eating meat, the necessity of it is relevant to whether or not it's okay to do it. In fact, necessity, or lack thereof, is precisely why it is not okay for some of us to eat meat. And I say some of us because this only applies to those of us with access to plant alternatives, so like you and I. Someone, say, living in a developing nation in extreme poverty, they don't have this option. So for them, eating meat is necessary and therefore not immoral. In the same vein, eating meat for those of us who don't need to, so it's unnecessary, is not always immoral. Roadkill is a good example. Let's say you're driving down the road and you come across a dead deer and you decide to take it home and cook it and eat it. There's no ethical concern there. Again, it is still unnecessary because you could just leave the deer and meet your nutritional needs via, plant sources. But choosing to take the deer and eat it, it harms no one. The deer's already dead. So in this case, eating meat is akin to doing cartwheels in your living room. Unnecessary, but harms no one. Of course, your support of everything I just said hinges on the belief that unnecessary suffering in general is wrong, not just when it applies to humans. More on that later. Needless killing is immoral.
It's kind of like when people say abortion is immoral. It's like, okay, I see that you believe that, but how is it immoral? Just because you say so?
It's immoral in the same way that needlessly killing a human being is immoral. It ignores the desire of a sentient being to remain alive. In the case of most meat production, there is an added level of harm. Not only is the animal's life ended, but its life up until that point is full of fear and pain and misery.
Eating something and killing something are two different things, so this is not really an argument against eating meat.
True, as I just explained with the roadkill example. In such a case, eating the deer is not immoral. If anything, it may be more moral than leaving the animal to go to waste and buying, plant products to eat instead. Plant production is better for the environment than meat production, more on that later, but better does not mean impact-free. But of course, most people are not doing this. Most people are not meeting their desire for meat via roadkill, right? Most people are purchasing their meat from grocery stores and, thereby supporting the torture and destruction of sentient beings. In the vast majority of cases, the eating cannot be separated from the killing.
It's kind of like the question, if someone stole something and gave it to you and you knew you wouldn't get in trouble, are you a bad person for accepting it? I don't think so, but maybe you do.
I don't know if such an action definitely makes someone a bad person. That's kind of a whole nother little bit of a convoluted topic that I don't want to get into here. But I absolutely think that the action itself of taking something from someone that was stolen, even though you didn't steal it yourself, is wrong. Whether you buy it from the thief or accept it as some sort of gift, the thief profits from the exchange in some way and is therefore incentivized to continue the behavior.
I think this argument is saying that life has inherent value, particularly the life of sentient beings. But that's a statement that's really impossible to support. How can you possibly quantify the value of life such that you can condemn human beings when they kill things?
I don't believe that life has inherent value. That's not why I'm vegan, personally. There are some people in this world who are evil people. They do evil things, and they do evil things consistently. And I think we would all agree that these people are bad people. I don't think that these individuals' lives have value, and I think the world would be a better place without them. What I care about is causing unnecessary suffering, and eating sentient beings when alternatives are available causes unnecessary suffering. Animals have a right to life.
Rights are a completely human construction.
Yes, but with potentially important, very meaningful consequences for non-human animals. An animal may not be obviously, cannot understand, what a right is, but it can clearly tell the difference between pleasure, happiness, and suffering. Giving an animal, say, the right to not be tortured clearly benefits it.
I think, for example, that humans also have the right to not be bought and owned, but a lot of people, including many vegans, apparently don't believe that this right extends to animals because many of them have bought and owned animals or are aware of people who buy and own animals and seemingly have no problem with it.
Actually, quite a few vegans are anti-pet ownership. They do believe that it is immoral. But I am not one of those vegans, so I won't go into their arguments here. The relevant point that I think you're missing is what makes owning a sentient being right or wrong, and that's consequences. The argument can be made that, caring for, having a dog, a cat, certain other species benefits these animals. But every situation has to be analyzed on a case-by-case basis. For instance, adopting a dog, a creature that has been bred to be very loyal and trusting of humans and to get great pleasure out of being a companion animal to humans, is very likely not exploitative. On the other hand, buying an elephant, a highly intelligent creature that travels miles a day, and attempting to keep it, in your backyard or in a zoo for that matter, probably cannot be defended. The dog will most likely benefit from being someone's pet. The elephant will most certainly not. But even in the case of dogs and other pets, a happy life obviously is not guaranteed. There are certainly instances where pets are abused, not well cared for. And there are laws in place to protect these animals and to deter future abuse. In Texas specifically, it is against the law to torture animals, fail to provide food, care, or shelter, abandon animals, transport or confine an animal in a cruel manner, kill, seriously injure, or poison an animal, cause an animal to fight with another, use a live animal as lure in a dog race, trip a horse, which, come on, Texas, get it together, injure an animal belonging to another person, or seriously overwork an animal. And these acts are punishable by $10,000 fine and up to 2 years in jail.
I think people have a right to not have their genitals forcibly removed, even if doing so happened to be helpful for humanity. but clearly most people don't think this right extends to animals.
Spaying and neutering also has important consequences for the animals. Keeping an animal from breeding ensures less unwanted births and therefore less unnecessary suffering. It also ensures less animals are available to sell or give away to people who are looking for a pet. Less animals we breed, the more people are to adopt the animals that are already here.
There are people who think that animals have some rights, but just not all the rights that humans have. And to me, this just seems arbitrary. How do you decide which rights animals have and don't have?
Again, if we decide based on consequences, it shouldn't be arbitrary. Having anti-abuse laws, so the right for animals not to be abused, makes sense because we know that animals suffer. Such laws deter human beings from hurting animals and ideally result in less unnecessary suffering. On the other hand, giving animals the right to vote or the right to operate motor vehicles makes no sense for obvious reasons. Such laws would be utterly meaningless.
What we describe as rights is based on an evolving, subjective, mutual, empathetic contract. I don't believe that there are just ethical laws floating in the cosmos or written in some book somewhere. You don't bestow rights upon something just because you like it. Rights are shared and upheld by a group or a society. Saying that animals have rights implies that animals have empathetic duties, which, as far as I know, most vegans don't hold animals accountable for behaving empathetically.
Animals actually do possess empathy along with capacity for reciprocity, compassion, fairness. I highly recommend watching ethologist Francis DeWall's TED Talk on this topic. It's called Moral Behavior in Animals, link in the description. But let's say that you're right and that animals can't feel empathy. Does this really matter in terms of rights? No. Take children, for example. An infant cannot empathize with you, and neither can children up to a certain age, except on a very base level. By your view of rights, children should not have any, and we adults should be able to do with them whatever we want. Now, you could argue, as objectivists do, that while a young child does not currently possess empathy, or in their case, complete rational function, that they have the potential to, assuming they reach adulthood. And so because of that, we should grant them rights to protect their possible future of empathetic or rational adulthood. I find such view rather creepy that a child's ability to suffer in and of itself isn't good enough to grant them protection from abuse, But if you do support such a view, what about psychopaths? People with little to no empathy. There is no cure for psychopathy. These people will never gain empathy as a child would, assuming that they reached adulthood. According to your view, psychopaths, whether they are criminals or not, can't have any rights. Or what about the severely mentally disabled? Again, no capacity for empathy, no ability to gain a capacity for empathy, no rights for them either. So hopefully I've shown that rights really have nothing to do with empathy, and at its heart, a system of rights really has to do with sentience, with capacity for suffering. Now, for the most part currently, that means human suffering, but not entirely. Again, we have anti-abuse laws, even for the animals we eat. The Texas law that I quoted earlier is for both companion animals and livestock. And I predict that the future holds for us even more stringent and broad anti-abuse laws for animals as we continue to evolve ethically and to expand our circle of compassion. It only makes sense that the rights that we extend to others expand as well. Suffering in general is bad and we should limit it.
Empathy generally causes us to have a negative reaction when we see death and suffering. This generally also happens when we see animals tortured or killed, but an emotional response alone is not an argument against eating meat.
I agree that an emotional response is not an argument against eating meat or anything else. A lot of us, all of us, have a negative emotional response to even the thought of eating our dead loved ones, and so it's something that we would never do, even though we can't explain why doing it would be wrong.
I have an emotional response when I see someone getting tortured in a movie or a video game. Does that mean we should limit suffering of movie and video game characters?
No, but an emotional response is not why myself and others are vegan. We are vegan because harming and killing animals causes unnecessary suffering, and we don't want to do that. Watching a movie or playing a video game depicting fictional suffering it causes no harm, much like your cartwheels.
Saying we should limit all suffering means nothing in and of itself. Why should we limit all suffering? What effect would that have?
Why should we limit human suffering? I'm assuming that you are in favor of such a goal, since you say later in the video that you are #team people and that you are for things that benefit and enhance the lives of humans. This implies that you would also be for limiting the things that do not benefit humans, things that enhance human suffering. But why? Why is human suffering bad, but not animal suffering? Because humans are humans? That's completely arbitrary, no less arbitrary than the belief that only men should have rights or that only white people should have rights. There's nothing morally relevant about the distinction between man and woman, between white and black, between human and non-human. Suffering is suffering, and all of us, man, woman, white, black, dog, cat, bear, pig, we all suffer. To be clear, this does not mean that all species are equal and that degrees of sentience don't exist. There are reasons why we should place the needs of human beings above other animals in certain situations. I talk about this in detail in this video. But eating animals for us, for those of us with plant alternatives, is not one of those situations. Eating animals for taste and convenience is not good enough to justify the harm and death of creatures that can suffer. Just like we would not find the pedophile justified in raping a child, no matter how much pleasure he or she received from doing so.
I don't believe in dogmatic laws that we follow just because it makes us feel good.
But this is exactly what you're doing with your team people position. There is no reason to care about human suffering but not care about animal suffering. The only reason to hold such a belief is because it means you don't have to take animal ethics seriously. It means you don't have to reconsider the bacon you eat or the leather you wear or the animal tested products that you buy. In other words, you are #team people because it makes you feel good.
Also, becoming vegan is one way to reduce suffering, but it's by no means the only way, and it's not clear that it's even the best way.
You're right, going vegan is not the only way to reduce suffering, but for many of us it is something that we can do that has a huge impact. So for many of us, it is the best way for us to reduce suffering. It's an area of suffering that many of us contribute to on a daily basis, even several times a day via our food choices.
For example, lots of animals are killed and tortured in the process of harvesting the grains and vegetables that humans, including vegans, eat.
An important part of the definition of veganism is as far as is possible and practicable. Unfortunately, being vegan means eating something, and right now, obtaining that something involves the death of certain sentient beings. Being vegan is not about perfection. It's about doing what we can to reduce suffering in a way that we and others can actually practice. And also, going vegan does reduce the harm to these animals, the animals that are killed during plant production. This is because a huge amount of plants, grains, and soys are fed to the livestock, to the animals that we eat. So instead of using these plants to feed the animals and then eating the animals, we can just eat the plants. The net harm is less.
Assuming reducing suffering is ideal, which again, I don't know why, veganism is one way. Another way would be to only buy your food from sources that are humane to animals.
I agree, and it's something that I've talked about here on this channel before. Again, I have no problem with eating roadkill. I also have no problem with eating unfertilized eggs from like a well cared for backyard hen. Eating meat and other animal products, as long as there is no harm involved, I have no concern with. Unfortunately, most humane meat and other animal products that you would buy in a store, they do not fit this criteria. They are often better, but certainly not cruelty-free. For instance, while cage-free chickens have the ability to walk around and spread their wings, they still have to experience painful debeaking, they still are eventually slaughtered, and the male chicks are still useless and are killed soon after birth. Plus, buying humane meat does not address the environmental concerns regarding animal production, which I'll get to in a moment. Meat production wastes land and food that could be used to feed people.
This one is weird. Are we implying that meat production is the cause of world hunger because we use too much land and feed livestock too much food? You're arguing that producing food is causing people to go hungry.
This is not what vegans are talking about. What we're talking about is efficiency of food production. Thermodynamics dictates that food energy value is lost along each level of the food chain, so to speak. Humans eating efficiently grown plants can be fed with far fewer hectares than humans eating meat from animals fed on plants. The most efficient way of feeding the world's growing population is with a vegan diet that's based on beans and grains, which have the best protein yield per input. As the world's population grows and as global warming threatens food security, this is going to be even more important.
Okay, there is plenty of food available in the world. The problem is that a fraction of humans are eating most of it and throwing away the leftovers. World hunger is not a result of people eating meat. It is a result of socioeconomic inequality brought about by corporate greed and war and a lot of other factors.
Yes, a fraction of humans are wasting most of it by feeding it to animals. It is being wasted by being converted into less efficient sources. Despite all of this, there is still a lot of food in the world thanks to modern farming methods and genetic modification. It's really more anti-GMO propaganda and conspiracy theories that are starving people, with leaders denying their people food because they claim that it's poisoned food aid. This won't always be the case, though. As the population grows, our food resources and available land will be continually stressed. We cannot keep up this level of waste forever, and in the meantime, all of this excess is the largest, easily preventable cause of global warming and environmental destruction. Meat production is bad for the environment.
The first implication, obviously, is that we should care about the environment, which, again, is one of those things that needs elaboration. You can't just say you should care about the environment. You need to tell us why.
Of course, the planet will be just fine without us, and life on Earth will go on regardless of extreme temperature, extreme weather, etc. But for humans living right now, today, particularly those living in developing nations, the state of the planet makes a huge difference. According to the World Health Organization, climate changes already are estimated to cause over 150,000 deaths annually. The risks are concentrated in the poorest populations, who have contributed the least to the problem of greenhouse gas emissions. And it gets worse. Between 2030 and 2050, climate change is expected to cause approximately 250,000 additional deaths per year from malnutrition, malaria, diarrhea, and heat stress. That's 250,000 people a year dead because of us, because of our irresponsible behavior. And this is not in some distant, far-off future. This is within our lifetimes.
Often people's response to this is we need to save the earth for future generations, which is noble, but again, am I obligated to do that? Do I have a moral duty to protect people that I will never meet, some of whom aren't even born yet? I feel like that's gonna be a hard notion to justify.
As I just demonstrated using data from the World Health Organization, this is not some far-off problem for people who we are never going to meet. This is a problem that exists right now today, and it is a problem that is only going to be worse for future generations if we don't change our behavior. Doing something about it should only be a hard notion to justify if you don't care about human beings, if you don't care about human quality of life. If, on the other hand, you are a member of #TeamPeople, doing something about it should be a no-brainer.
And I'm not saying that these are made-up concerns. The scarcity of natural resources and climate change, these are real things. The part that I'm missing is why I have to do something about it. To quote Joe Rogan, I am #TeamPeople. I support things that benefit and enhance the lives of human beings.
So when being Team People helps you justify not caring about animals, then you're Team People. But when being Team People means actually benefiting and helping Team People, like by reducing your impact on the environment and thereby staving off climate change, suddenly you wonder why you're obligated to care. Sorry, but that doesn't make you Team People. That makes you Team You.
Because of this, I support things like zoos and scientific testing on animals because they benefit humans. And sometimes these things are frivolous, but I think enjoying frivolous, even dangerous things is often important and enriching to humans.
Any humanist or even vegan can support useful animal testing that saves lives, although there's definitely a discussion to be had about specific animal testing and whether or not it's actually useful. It seems that a lot of it probably isn't. Likewise, there can certainly be discussion about zoos, and there may be an argument that in favor of at least some zoos, or at least in favor of housing certain animals in zoos. These are nuanced issues that should be discussed with both human and animal welfare in mind. Just saying all animal testing and all zoos all the time because you are supposedly Team People is not rational. Again, you are just making an arbitrary distinction between species, seemingly because that's what benefits you.
So the question here is enjoying meat more important or as important as protecting the environment? Well, guess what, guys? It's a matter of opinion.
Is a pedophile enjoying molesting children more important or as important as protecting children? Is that just a matter of opinion too? This is the problem with moral relativists and hedonists. You are perfectly happy to justify harm to others based on the supposed supreme value of your own pleasure. But you know what? This goes for things you don't like too. If you value your own pleasure over preventing the suffering of others, it makes you a selfish person. And it means that if you care about consistency, you shouldn't criticize others when they do the same.
I get unironic joy from preparing and eating good food, including meat. Some people's entire lives are devoted to the passion of making and eating food. You may think that's dumb, but it's very important to a lot of people, and it adds value to the lives of a lot of people.
It's not equally easy for everybody to go vegan, and it's also not equally easy for everybody to avoid molesting children. But just because you like something or have a strong urge to do something, it doesn't justify harmful behavior. Continuing on with the pedophile example, I want to really give props to some really great people who fight their urges and they overcome their urges. These are the virtuous pedophiles. They're people who have a natural and unwanted sexual attraction to children, but they don't rationalize it and they don't defend immoral behavior. Instead, they fight it and they find ways to calm it and to overcome their urges because they know it's wrong and they don't want to do wrong. I know pedophilia is a touchy subject, no pun intended. Seriously, though, I really do find these people inspiring. You know, we aren't talking about enjoying meat. You know, these are serious urges that they know they can never, ever fulfill. If these people can say no to that, I think you and I and virtually everyone else can say no to fucking bacon.
The second implication of this argument is that veganism is inherently better for the environment than being a meat eater. And this is sort of like the argument about veganism being healthier. If a person was a vegan but drove a gas-powered 18-wheeler that they washed with gallons of water and they dumped their trash in their backyard, is that person really doing much better than a person who eats meat but is active in conservation efforts and limiting their carbon footprint?
All other things being equal, going vegan is better for the environment, assuming that one is eating a sensible and balanced vegan diet, not a vegan diet based on lettuce. I have a video on that stupid nonsense there. Normal vegans, most vegans are not getting their calories from lettuce. They're getting their calories from grains and beans, etc. In the same vein, normal people are not driving 18-wheelers. So essentially, you had to make up a ridiculous example, this 18-wheeler driving vegan, to make any sort of comparison here. Although actually, it is entirely possible that an 18-wheeler driving vegan is on par with a meat eater in terms of environmental damage. Check out the information in the description. Competing with an average person with a sensible vegan diet, you won't beat them by recycling, you won't beat them by biking everywhere, you won't beat them by turning off the lights when you leave the room, nor will you beat them by letting it mellow when it's yellow. You have to rely on them unnecessarily driving an 18-wheeler, which probably no vegan has ever done anywhere. And even then, you might only break even.
Veganism is one way to do it, but implying that it's the only way or the best way is dubious. There are lots of things that humans do that are bad for the environment, and for people who want to limit their impact, you don't get to tell them that your way is better than theirs.
For the amount of effort and the return on your effort in terms of environmental payoff, of course veganism is the best way. This only seems dubious if you can't or won't do the math, or if you are dead set on misrepresenting the majority of people's realities, a la the 18-wheeler driving vegan. If you happen to be driving an 18-wheeler and eating meat and you're thinking about giving up one, by all means, give up the 18-wheeler first if you want. For most people, this is not their reality, and the only most destructive behavior that they currently do that is within their power to easily change is eating animal products. Yes, there is more that vegans can do. We can reduce in other ways, and we should. But there is nothing that has the most bang for the buck as that first step, taking that first step in reducing and eliminating animal products. Trying to do things in any other order, focusing on the little things while completely ignoring the elephant in the room, seems bizarre and even counterproductive.
Also, this argument implies that there's no possible way that meat production could be improved or made more eco-friendly, which, as you might imagine, is not true.
No, it doesn't imply that. It implies that the way that things are currently done is destructive. If you want to improve the system, by all means do that. But potentially changing the system for the future does not excuse your participation in it today.
For example, simply changing the diet of cows raised for milk and food would itself greatly lower methane emissions.
Changing the system is by no means a simple matter, and suggesting that it is one, as you seem to be doing, is just ignorance of agriculture and the sheer magnitude of the infrastructure that we're dealing with. The Guardian has a really good article on the issue that I have linked in the description. Being an environmentalist, a humanist, a member of Team People, as you say, it makes no sense whatsoever without striving to reduce and ideally eliminate animal product consumption. So hopefully I have done a good job showing that the arguments for veganism are neither dogmatic nor presumptuous, as you claim at the end of your video, although I do understand to an extent why you may see it that way. There are certainly a number of vocal vegans who make some really bad arguments for veganism, usually revolving around exaggerated health claims, but there are also some asinine ethical arguments as well, like the deontological argument that eating animals and animal products is always wrong, no matter what, no matter the context, no matter the consequence. Given my earlier examples of roadkill and backyard hens, clearly I don't agree with that, and many other vegans don't either. So that is it. Thank you so much to everyone for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I guess that's it. If you want to subscribe, all that kind of stuff, whatever. Thanks again. And look at me getting a video up, like 3 days after the last one? Holy moly, when was the last time that happened? It's amazing. I should have another one up, like, within 24 hours. I might have just jinxed that, but I should have another one up very soon as well, so stay tuned for that.